Ayan, all right. Okay, I'll just give it a few minutes before we begin. Sometimes Zoom is syncing a little bit. So, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Jay Agonoy. I'm with the online journal Keepsakes. And today we will be having special guests to discuss one special aspect of information dissemination and to as well as inform and educate the public about the value of sign language in information dissemination, especially in these times. So I have with me Mr. John Balisa from the Filipino Sign Language Access Team for COVID-19. Hello and good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, Jay. Good afternoon.
All right. On with him, with John is Miss Yvette Aporado. She is a deaf person, and she will be joining us through John's line over at his Viber. Hello to you as well, Miss Yvette.
Okay. So she's saying hello and good afternoon as well.
All right. Because of
All
this
right.
quarantine period, we have a lot of restraints, especially in our movements. And one important thing, as I've said earlier, is information dissemination. So while um, I think Miss Yvette is also now on the chat, on the Zoom meeting. So once we're settled, we will begin asking. This is a list of 6 questions that involves the viewer, the deaf, as well as the interpreter, the one who's communicating, especially at the time where information dissemination is very crucial in informing the public about the hazards of COVID-19, about the government guidelines, and more than that is how we can get the message to everyone, including the deaf. So I guess John, we can start asking questions.
Yes, yes, sure.
All right. Okay, so I'll start with Miss Yvette. The first question would be, as a viewer, does the lack of Filipino Sign Language interpreters make it difficult for the deaf to understand the news and make proper decisions?
Yes, that's very true, no? It is true, especially without the interpreter inset on television. It's very challenging for us to really understand what is being said on television, on the news. And so usually what we do is ask our family members or our friends or relatives, but sometimes the information we get from them is not enough. It's very limited. Okay. Again, because of not all family members would know sign language. And so it's very important. So it's a necessity for us to have interpreter inset so that we understand fully and completely what is being said on the news.
So thank you very much. That is Miss Yvette and being interpreted by John, by the way. So this question goes for Miss Yvette and John as well. As a viewer, okay, let me check. Okay, second question would be for the viewer and the interpreter. Why is there a need for Filipino Sign Language interpreters in information dissemination?
So this is Yvette answering again. Well, it is very important for the deaf community and because Well, again, because they are not able to access information through their you know, because they are not able to hear. So it's not only information on news, but all sorts of information in healthcare, in whatever dealings that they have with the community. So it's very important that they should understand what is going on, and that's why interpreter plays a crucial role in bridging that communication gap.
As for you,
So
John,
it's my turn naman.
yes, your turn.
Yeah, for me naman as an interpreter, yeah, it's the same perspective as the deaf people. Interpreters are very important because, well, it's not only that they help like bridge the communication gap between the deaf and hearing, but also interpreters sort of like cultural ambassadors, because sometimes hearing people don't understand yung culture of the deaf people. In the same way that deaf people don't really fully understand what the hearing culture, and those are two different things. So it's not only about the language, but it's also about making sure that the cultures of both the hearing and the deaf would try to be try to blend as easily as possible, and try to make it as harmonious as possible. So yeah, that's why interpreters is very, very important.
Thank you very much, John and Miss Yvette. Okay, let's go to the perspective of interpreters. I'll be asking John again another question. In this time where the social video app TikTok is making waves, how can we tell the uninformed about the crucial role of sign language, any sign language aside from Filipino sign language?
Well, so I think that was the incident that happened maybe like 2 days ago, where some people like mocked our interpreters on television instead.
Yes.
Um, Primarily because I think it's the lack of awareness. Maybe that's a novelty kasi it's a new thing that the first time that they saw a TV inset, and so maybe for the benefit of some likes, or trying to be famous, they make fun of the interpreting community, without these people realizing that it's not only the interpreting community that they are affecting, but it's also the deaf community. Okay, um, in a way, yes, it is insulting for the interpreters, but more importantly, it's I would say oppressive. Okay, for the deaf community. Um, Usually they would see us doing a lot of signing on the inset without them realizing that it's actually a language. We're not just like inventing signs, we're not just inventing movements like what they do on TikTok, right? But this is a real language. Filipino Sign Language is a real language that is owned by the deaf community. And so for for these people to mock interpreters, to mock FSL, it's like saying that they're also mocking, a very natural language, and it's mocking, the community who owns that language. So I'm just hoping there would be more understanding, and there would be more respect coming from these people.
Thank you very much, John. So, to recap, basically, this is communicating to the deaf. It's not just hand movements, it's not just gestures, it's communicating to the deaf community. All right. Okay. I think this question can be answered by either John or Miss Yvette. Is there a difference between Filipino Sign Language and the sign language used in other countries?
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, here in the Philippines, we have our own sign language, which is Filipino Sign Language. Okay? It is a very unique language. It's 100% uniquely for Filipino deaf community. And so, like for example, Yvette is signing this. No? This is the Filipino Sign Language for thank you. Okay. In Japanese Sign Language, they would sign thank you this way. Arigato gozaimasu. So like in the Philippines, the sign for sister and brother would be like this. But in Japan, they would sign it differently. Okay, a sister would be signed like this. So I'm copying Miss Yvette signing, and brother would be signed like this. Okay, so that's the Japanese sign language for brother. Okay,
Mm. So how in Filipino sign
and
language, how does
so
sister and brother, but how does yeah,
well here in the Philippines, this is brother,
brother?
and
Right.
this is sister. Okay. But in
Right.
Japan, they have a different sign
Mm.
altogether for that.
Mm-mm.
And so, the same way that we have our own alphabet in Filipino Sign Language, in Australia, for example, in Australian Sign Language, they would use a different hand shape for the sign language, like A, B, C, D. But here in the Philippines, we use A, B, C, D. So as you can see, like they're, they are two very distinct languages. And all over the world, most countries, they have their own sign languages. And I would also like to add to that, Jay. Yes, Filipino Sign Language is very unique. So it's just want to clarify that FSL it's not related to the spoken Filipino. Okay, hindi siya Tagalog. Because many people thought FSL meaning Tagalog yan. No. Okay. Spoken Tagalog or spoken Filipino is very different. Like grammatically, structurally, uh, there are two different languages altogether. Okay, FSL is a visual language; it has its own structure. Um, and yes, it's true. There's no such thing as an international sign language. Okay, so as Ms. Yvette mentioned, like each country, they would have their own sign languages. Why? Because it's deeply rooted to their own cultures. Okay, so here in the Philippines, even here in the Philippines, we do have like subsets of Filipino sign language. Like there would be you would notice like regional variation. So like deaf people from Manila may be signing a little bit differently from deaf people, like for example in the Visayas or in Mindanao. Okay, and also there's also what we call like the Becky signs, like gay signs. So that's it's not a language on its own, but it's sort of as an offshoot of Filipino Sign Language. So the LGBT deaf community actually, uh, you know, created their own sort of signals or codes that only them could understand. Just like in spoken language, we have our general Filipino, but the LGBT hearing community would have their own like Bekinese. So yeah, it's a very interesting language. So yeah, there's no such thing as an international sign.
Okay. Usually, because of all this sign language, usually how long does it take to learn the Filipino sign language? Was it weeks, days?
So this is Yvette answering. Well, it could vary. Okay, it could vary from person to person. Again, it's the capacity of a person of learning a language. If that person is able to grasp the structure, the linguistic features of FSL, maybe it would be easier for them to understand and understanding the rules of grammar of FSL. So but for there are like even for deaf people, we could not assume that they are born already knowing sign language. They also have to learn, the formal signs as soon as they start in school. But if they are born deaf, they don't have FSL yet as part of them. So I'd just like to add, as a hearing person, it will take many years to learn sign language. Again, just like any language, it's continuously like evolving. So it doesn't mean that okay, I learned sign language for 1 year, and that's it. No, because like for maybe next month there would be new signs, added to the vocabulary of FSL. Okay, just like what happened now during this COVID crisis. Like we don't have we don't have established signs yet for many of the technical words that they are using now on television news. So what we did in the team of the FSL Access team, we have a deaf consultants there who came together and discussed and analyze, the meaning of certain words that they are using on TV, and then they agreed to establish some arbitrary signs for like technical words. So Yvette is adding like Filipino Sign Language. They would have again regional variations, and we actually published a book um, wherein it's a compilation of like different vocabularies all over the Philippines on FSL, and it also includes idiomatic expressions. So it could vary, okay, from region to region. Um, yeah, there are certain communities here in the Philippines who would be who might be signing differently, and we are hoping that we could continue with this project because again, it's well, language is evolving, and in order to preserve this language, we have to make sure that all of this are being documented.
Exactly. Okay. Well, we move on to the next question. Okay. So, this is, I believe, an important question for everyone who is interested to communicate with the deaf. Why should everyone learn the Filipino Sign Language, and w- how does it affect the communication between the hearing and the deaf?
So this is Yvette again. Yeah, signing. Well, it goes both ways for hearing and deaf people. Well, as I have mentioned, Filipino Sign Language is a very rich language. And in order for the two culture, the two communities, hearing and deaf, to understand each other, we first need to realize that Filipino Sign Language should be recognized as equal status with other spoken languages. So that's the first step. Okay. Um, so, and in addition to what Ms. Yvette was saying, um, I think because, well, there's a huge communication gap between hearing and the deaf. And, um, you know, if we really want to, if we want to make the Philippines an inclusive community, an inclusive country, I think the first step is for us to learn, the language of the deaf, because for so long they have been excluded, again, because they don't have access to information. Deaf people, parang us hearing people have set a lot of barriers, okay, to communication, to information. And so if us hearing people would be able to learn sign language, FSL, then that means breaking down those barriers and making sure that we achieve that goal of being an inclusive country.
Right. Thank you very much. And last question for both John and Miss Yvette. why we should not discriminate against the deaf and the Filipino Sign Language interpreters by dismissing sign language as some form of mimicry. Like for example, how some regard FSL as TikToking, mere TikToking. Why we should not do that?
So this is Yvette again signing. As I have mentioned, Filipino Sign Language is something that should not be made fun of. Okay, it's a it's a it's a crucial and a vital component of our deaf community. Okay, so if that is the way if that is how they would treat the language, making fun of the language, then that would mean that our rights as human beings are not being respected and recognized. Um, doesn't mean that because we are using a different language that we are like second class citizens. Okay, but being able to respect and recognize the language and the culture and the identity of the deaf people, and making us be part of the bigger society, of the bigger community. Okay, then that means that these people should afford the respect that deaf people and the interpreters uh, deserve. And so that is why we actually have a legislation, the Filipino Sign Language Act, that would promote the usage of FSL all over the country, as well as the recognition of FSL as a natural language of equal status to other spoken languages in the Philippines.
Right. Okay. So to recap everything, Filipino Sign Language interpreters are important in disseminating or sharing information. This is why the deaf community has fought so much to include Filipino Sign Language interpreters in newscasts, and even in the city of Manila, they have a Filipino Sign Language interpreter there for every Facebook Live that they do. So props for the city of Manila for being inclusive. Uh, and yes, the Filipino Sign Language is not TikTok. It's not meant to be mocked. It's not something that people will dismiss as some form of mimicry. And in the context of sign language worldwide, there are unique sign languages for every country. And as with language, it evolves. So that's why it's important for people who are interested in learning sign language to understand it. And it's basically a commitment, John. Am I correct?
Yes, that's right. Well, for us interpreters, it's a lifelong commitment. So yes, you really it's not only about learning a language, but it's more about uh, learning about a group of people, learning about the culture, of the deaf people.
Right. That said, thank you very much to John Baliza, our interpreter from the Filipino Sign Language Access
Sorry,
team.
Miss.
Yes?
Sorry, Jay. Yvette would like to add something.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes. In terms of educating, yes, in terms of the labels that we use to address deaf people, yeah, they would prefer to be called deaf with a big D. So that's big D, EEAF, rather than calling them hearing impaired. So that's the deaf friendly term.
Mm, mm. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right. I'll give the floor again to John and Miss Yvette for their parting words for this conversation.
So this is from Yvette. Well, for the hearing people, it's very sad to see what happened with regard to the TikTok incident. But then again, I'm hoping that there would be more respect towards us deaf people, towards our community, our language, and our culture. And we are hoping that instead of you, um, you know, mocking um, our language, I'm hoping that we could just all work together. Um, that these interpreters are really working very hard to ensure we get access to information. And I'm hoping that we would try to do our part in cherishing this, in making sure that we take care of each other. Again, respect begets respect. So recognize that having this access is our basic right. And so we're hoping that everyone would be more aware about that and would be more understanding. Thank you. So that's from Elizabeth. For me, yes. Well, FSL is it's not a laughing matter. It's something very serious, especially now during COVID. That we have it's difficult kasi because like for most interpreters we are so overwhelmed by doing the news interpreting on television and then having to respond but to this to the incident of TikTok. It's parang our plates are already so full. So I'm just hoping that for hearing people who well, if they can be of any help to the deaf community, I'm just hoping that they would be added problems. Okay, so just be respectful, just be more sensitive, and be more mindful that what we are doing on television is something serious. So it could actually mean life or death for the deaf community. So and honestly, we have some of our interpreters who are well what happened in the bullying on online actually impacted them like mentally, emotionally. So there are very few interpreters left now, like very limited now yung number of interpreters, and I'm hoping that we instead of bullying them, instead of mocking them, that we could just be more supportive, especially during this time, during the COVID crisis.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Again, John Baliza from the Filipino Sign Language Access Team with Miss Yvette Apurado from our deaf community. And I would like to give special thanks to Danela Trisha Tabihe and Hello Mirai for heeding my call to have our research speakers. They are the reasons that we meet together in this conversation, despite the technical difficulties, despite the time constraints, despite the almost impossible schedule. They gave time to be with us on this conversation. And with respect to them, we will be recording. Will be as we finish recording this. This conversation will be posted right away on our Facebook page, and I'll be writing a story about this on my website. That's jagonoy.xyz. So most of the time, you will be, it's not focused on me, it's focused on John as the interpreter, because we may have an audience from the deaf community, especially that we need to inform the uninformed, the hearing, that FSL is no laughing matter. It's serious and it's a matter of life and death. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you. And this won't be the last conversation that we'll be having, John.
Yes, yes, definitely. And anytime, Jay. Yes.
Yes, all right.
Thank you so much for having us here.
All right. The Filipino Sign Language Access Team for COVID-19 is, what's the URL again? Sorry, John.
We actually are on Facebook, so we have a Facebook group. So it's FSL Access Team dash 19. So you could just look us up on Facebook.
All right. Okay. So with that said, thank you very much, and we will see you in our next video. For now, stay safe, always wash your hands, and always follow the guidelines. All right. Okay. Stop recording. Okay.